Have you ever wondered why Europe doesn't build skyscrapers? No? Well, wonder it now, please, because I'm going to make a video on it and I would like you to watch it. I'll give you a second. Wonder it. Think about it. You think of New York, think of Tokyo, think of... I don't know. Then you think of Paris, Berlin. Not very tall, is it? To be honest, even though London has a few skyscrapers, not that big. I know it's not a funny video today, guys. I know it's not unusual memes, but unusual memes in the bin it appears. So we got to find something else to watch. And right here we have 12 million views from 2 years ago. So it's a banger. Why Europe doesn't build skyscrapers.
Why aren't there many skyscrapers in Europe?
I don't know. Tell me.
Despite being one of the most developed, densely populated, and economically prosperous continents, Europe has surprisingly few skyscrapers.
Are we Europe anymore? I mean, we still are in a European continent, even though we're an island, aren't we, in the UK? Scratch my head. Geography, what?
Particularly when compared to Asia and North America.
I do wonder this. I often wonder this.
Of the 218 skyscrapers constructed on the continent to date, 66% of them are located in just 5 cities.
218?
London, Paris, Frankfurt, Moscow, and Istanbul.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know Paris had skyscrapers at all. I thought it was all flat. Like your mum. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
In cities not embraced the skyscraper. How do they thrive without the significant inner urban space and floor areas that these clever structures provide? And is everything about to change in our increasingly urbanized world?
I hope not. I hope Europe doesn't lose its, character. I feel like New York's character is skyscrapers, but I feel like Europe's isn't.
Rose to prominence in the 19th century, first in Chicago and later in New York. Many European cities were already firmly established, with grand historic buildings and public spaces that left little room for large new structures. Most of Europe's cities around that time were also more evenly zoned, and were not facing the high demand for floor space in key districts that typically drives high-rise development. Additionally, as the power and influence of North America began to grow, a cultural rivalry emerged between Americans who saw Europe's class system as outdated and Europeans who saw some American ideals as eroding traditions and the European way of life.
Yeah, man, there's a conflict.
As a result, each continent became wary of adopting the other's concepts. While North America aims to become the model for a new age, Europe sought to preserve its heritage. While this explains why skyscraper construction didn't initially catch on in Europe, it doesn't explain what has held the continent back since.
What I fail to understand is, surely in New York, say, there's a reason they have to have so many skyscrapers. I know they've got a financial district, Wall Street, a lot of banks there, a lot of big banks, as we do in London. We've got the big banks, HSBC in London as well. I feel like Europe is very, they want to keep the culture alive, like they said in the video, but surely you need the space. Do you know what I'm saying? Surely there's a reason you have to. Surely we don't build skyscrapers because we want to. Surely we build them because we have to. We need the jobs, we need to build the businesses. I don't know. Surely you can't just decide, we won't do that. Where's the space gone? You need, where do you go?
In the wake of the Second World War...
Oh, that beats fire though. That little riff there.
In the wake of the Second World War...
Wait.
It continent back since.
That would be a sick hip-hop beat,
In the wake of the Second World War, many thought European cities would modernize and replicate the skyscrapers that were rising across North America.
Okay. That's what I would think as well.
In Western Europe, where many cities lost landmark and historic structures,
this is awful, by the way.
An overwhelming desire to restore what had been destroyed took hold.
That's fair as well.
In addition, the lower population of Europe at that time meant that the demand for floor area that principally drives skyscraper construction wasn't there. As a result, modest structures replaced buildings that could not be saved or restored.
Okay.
Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the expanding Soviet Union's rebuild efforts consisted largely of mid-rise repetitive structures.
Yeah, just boring, same old. No variety.
It was during this time that Europe saw its first skyscrapers begin to rise.
That is a sick
Not in
shot.
response to growth and prosperity, but in an effort by the Soviets to indicate their power and influence.
Boo, Russia though. Boo. Brusselsization. What?
While Brussels has never constructed a true skyscraper, it is partly responsible for the lack of skyscrapers across the continent.
Okay. Well, then Brussels.
Without any significant zoning regulations in place, the 1960s saw many buildings in the city demolished to make way for large, modern structures that had little regard for architectural or cultural value. Recognising the damage this indiscriminate redevelopment was doing to the city, many prominent figures and architects coined the term Brusselisation and lobbied to introduce
I do like that word.
laws.
That is a great word.
These regulations significantly limited the scale of new buildings and required historic facades to be restored and incorporated into new developments, preserving the cultural fabric of the city. The row in Brussels led to a general dislike for modern buildings across Europe, with many seeing them as bland or soulless.
I do see
In
that argument as
response,
well.
Numerous cities adopted similar regulations and set aside controlled districts, like Paris's La Défense, to keep high-rise development away from historic centres.
Yeah, I feel that as well. I feel that. Like, imagine if you get like a... What's annoying in London, by the way? Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but it's happened in a little bit. Like, you get an apartment, right? You pay all this rent, and then someone literally builds a building next to you, and you have a great view. You sign on for a great view, and then you don't have the view anymore. That happens a lot in New York. It happens a lot in London. Luckily for us, it's not happening to our view. Imagine like in Paris, you got the Eiffel Tower. And someone builds a skyscraper right in front of that. It's just like long, isn't it? But my question still remains: where do they go though? What's the alternative?
By the start of the 21st century,
smaller rooms in small
around
houses.
Tall buildings were softening across the continent, as architectural trends moved away from box-like structures.
Shout out Malmo! I love Malmo. What a city!
And as the world became increasingly globalized. Since the early 2000s, major financial centres like London, Paris, Moscow, Istanbul and Frankfurt have seen several skyscrapers rise, as demand for commercial space in their centres has increased.
Yeah.
By contrast, smaller European cities that have been experiencing more modest growth have turned their focus to the environment and improving living standards for citizens.
That is sick. That is fire.
In recent years, urban areas in Scandinavia and Central Europe have consistently ranked among the highest in the world for sustainability, happiness and well-being, while maintaining importance within their national economies. However, skyscraper construction in the cities of today is no longer driven purely by economic growth or the need for commercial office space.
Right,
With 60% of the global human population set to be living in urban areas by 2030, residential skyscrapers are now rising in prominence, particularly across Asia and North America.
Okay.
As many traditional rural-based industries become automated...
I feel like he can't say rural like Jay. I can't say rural, or mural. Isn't JJ's mural?
As many traditional rural-based industries become automated,
how do I say?
Millions are migrating into cities and major urban areas, driving significant demand for residential space that is often met with high-rise structures.
Yeah.
Europe is not immune to this phenomenon, particularly in such a heavily globalized world, and with the continent's desire to keep up with the progress and economic growth of China and the US. As such, Europe could witness a skyscraper boom in the decades ahead.
Right, so long story short, why Europe doesn't build skyscrapers originally, because in the war they wanted to maintain the cultural structures of the buildings after they, got bombed, which is fair, very, very fair. They also don't want to get in the way of other, cultural buildings, Eiffel Tower, etc., etc. However, due to a lot of farming and a lot of, rural jobs becoming automated now, many people are moving into the cities, and they're not looking for office jobs. Or sorry, the demand for skyscrapers is not necessarily coming from the office, but it's more coming from residential. People looking for places to live. And why not live in the massive towers? Okay, cool. So maybe we're going to see a change in this this title in the next decade.
However, with entire urban centres now being declared historically significant, and with the desire to retain as much culture and architecture as possible rightly holding strong up to the present day, the unique challenge facing future skyscraper construction in Europe is all to do with the past.
Can't they just make see how these are modern skyscraper buildings, right? Very futuristic. Can't they make skyscrapers in the style of European cities as they are today? So it's not necessarily futuristic, modern, we can all fly in the year 3000 and all that stuff, but rather elegant, cultural, but still tall to fit the people in,
If you enjoyed this video and would like to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, subscribe to the B1M.
If you enjoyed this video and want more from Randolph looking at stupid stuff on the internet, subscribe. Take care, guys. See you tomorrow.